In this video, I will talk about how to solving with radicals. So what is radicals? Radical is you see a polynomial with a square root, or maybe fourth root or other root. So how do we do that? For example, if I see a square root 7x plus 2 equals to 4 and I want to solve for x. Whenever you see a radical, your first thought is you want to get rid of the radical. In order to get rid of the radical, you want to square both sides. So that means you raise the power to 2 on both sides. So I will get square. Okay, in that case, the square root and the square, they can cancel out. What I have is 7x plus 2 equals to 4 squared, which is 16. Now we can solve for x like what we do usually. I subtract negative 2 on both sides. So 7x equals to 14 and then divide by 7. So our x is equal to 2. So now, what if this is not a square root, it's a cubic root? So, if you've seen a cubic root, the idea is the same. You need to raise the power to the third power on both sides. You want to raise to the third power on both sides. So in here, you want to cube it on both sides. Remember that when you're raising the both sides, it's everything on the left side and everything on the right side. So that's why you need to put the parentheses, because on the right side, you don't just have the number, you also have the negative sign. Okay, so cubic root and the cubic power, they cancel. And now we have negative 4. So negative 4 to the cubic power means you use negative 4 multiplied 3 times. So you end up to get a negative sign. So we will have negative 16.4. Now I add 1 on both sides. So x equals to negative 63. So now if I see an example like to the fourth root, okay, so in here, the idea is similar. If you have a fourth root, that means you want to raise both sides to the fourth power. So I will have 3x plus 6 equals to negative 2 to the fourth power. You will have 4 negative 2 multiplied together. So I got 3x plus 6 equals to 16. Because all the negative got cancelled. And then I can solve it by subtracting 6 on both sides and then divided by 3. So x is equal to 10 over 3. Okay, the next one is you will see something like this. On the right side, on the left side of the function, you have more than just the radical. If you just simply raise it on both sides, you will not be able to cancel out. What you want to do is you want to isolate the radicals. What does it mean, isolate the radicals? So that means you want to move everything that without the radicals to the other side of the equation. In this case, it's going to be the right side. So in here, I've got subtracting x on both sides. I have square root of 4x plus 1 equals to 5 minus x. Now I can raise to the second power, which is square them on both sides. I square it, so I will have 4x plus 1 equals to, now, right now we should be very familiar with the perfect square. If you don't, you can just FOIL it, but the perfect square formula is a plus b squared is equal to a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So this is subtracting is the same. You will have plus or minus in here. Oh, in here I got 25 minus 10x plus x squared. Now we can just solve x like what we do how to solve quadratic function. We can move all the terms on one side and set the equation equals to 0. So subtract 4x and then minus 1. So I have 0 equals to 25 minus 14x plus x squared. So it should be negative 24. So after this, you can either factor it, use the AC method to factor it, or you can use quadratic formula. Okay, so I'm going to skip in how to solve the equation here, because right now I want to focus on how to solve what's the skill set to solve the radicals. So another example would be if you see the function, they have radicals on, they have two radicals on one side. What you want to do, if you just square them, it won't work. You will still have the radical on one side. What you want to do is you want to isolate one radicals. So that means you want to just left the radical on one side and the other radical on the other side. So what we're going to do is I can move these radical to the right side. So I add in square root of x on both sides. Now, what I have is 3x minus a square root equals to square root of x. Now I can square both sides, which means you raise to the second power. So I have square. Now our function will become 3x minus a equals to x. Now I can solve for x. Subtracting x on both sides, 2x minus a equals to 0, so x is equal to 4. All right. Now, let's look at another examples. What if you see something that's more complicated? You will have a radical and number, such as I have square root of 2x plus 1 minus square root of x equals 1. What you want to do is you want to isolate one radical first, and by doing that, I add square root of x on both sides. Now, I have square root of 2x plus 1 equals to square root of x plus 1. Now, you want to raise to the second power, which is square them on both sides. You want to square everything, so that means we have a plus 1 here. Don't forget about this term, you want to plus the 1. So after I square both sides, I will have 2x plus 1. So in here, it's not x plus 1 squared. No, this is wrong. I emphasize that a lot in the class. A plus b squared is not equals to a squared plus b squared. It's equals to a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. This is the perfect square formula. So this one, I will have square root of x squared plus 2 times square root of x times 1 and plus 1 squared. So simplify, I have a 2x plus 1 equals to x plus 2 square root of x plus 1. So this looks complicated, but it's not. What we're going to do is we'll repeat what we did earlier before. We want to isolate the term with the radicals. So we isolate the radicals. So in that case, I need to subtract x and the minus 1 on both sides. Now I have x equals to 2 times square root of x. Now, after we isolate it, we can just square them on both sides. Be careful when you square them, don't forget to square the 2. Now, I have x squared equals to 4 times x. So now we can solve it by subtracting 4x on both sides, set the equation equals to 0. To do that, and then you can use factoring or AC method or quadratic formula, either way. So in this one, it's easier to use factoring. So I just leave it here. You might be continue to solve for x, the value for x. Okay, now last one. I'm going to give a very complicated one. If it says two radical that contain more than one terms, such as square root of 3x plus 9, subtract 4x plus 4 equals to negative 1. So in here, you will always start with isolated the radical, isolated one radical on one side. You can pick either one, but it's easier to add this one on both sides. That means I can move this one guy to the right side of the equation. So by doing that, I have square root of 3x plus 9 equals to square root of x plus 4 and minus 1. And now, after we do that, we can square both sides. So you see that I always put the parentheses to remind myself I'm not just square one terms of the equation, I'm squaring both sides, everything that including on the side. That I have 3x plus 9 equals to x plus 4 square root, and then minus 2 times square root of x plus 4 at 1 square. All right, now simplify it. Now you want to combine all the like terms and then set the equation equals to 0 and see what would you get. So not set the equation to 0. You want to isolate the radicals or the roots. By doing that, I need to subtract x on both sides, minus 4 on both sides, also minus 1. Then I can get rid of these terms. So my function will become 2x plus 5 equals to negative 2 square root of x plus 4. Now we can raise it to the second power by square them on both sides. In that case, the perfect square, I got 4x squared plus 20x plus 25 equals to 4 times x plus 4. So we have to be very careful when we're doing the calculation, because in here you square both terms. Negative 2, when you square, you got a 2, you got a 4, and then you square the radicals. You will end up to have a positive x plus 4. Don't forget the parentheses so that you will remember later your 4 is going to multiply the x. And then what you're going to do is you're going to set the equation equals to 0. So you will be able to solve the function. So when we're setting this equals to 0, I will end up to have 4x squared plus 12x equals to 0. You can factor it by factor out 4x plus 3x, plus 3. by the zero product rule, we will get either 4x equals to 0 or x plus 3 equals to 0. Then x is either equal to 0 or x equals to -3. So that's it for this chapter. I want to recap that. So the tips to solving the radical is we always trying to isolate, like if you've seen complex function like this one, you always trying to isolate one radical first so that you can get rid of one radical. And then you would repeat it to do the same thing because you will see another radical, and then you isolate that radical again and try to see if you need to raise it to the second power, third power, or fourth power. And then you set in the equation equal to 0. You can either factor it, use AC method, or you can apply the quadratic formula to solve the equation. So that's it for this chapter.